Hello. Today I want to show you how I took my original Logitech steering wheel and removed it, and I've got my new Mamo steering wheel. I'm going to show you how I install the buttons from the Logitech into the Mamo. First, I just had this sub-assembly so I could show you. Let me lift this off. Now, I already got the little baby screws out of this. And when you take them out, you need a small miniature Phillips for eyeglasses to get them little screws out of there. I don't know if you can see that little screw. And that's a little Phillips. And you got to have that, or you won't get it. You won't even get this the switches out of the steering wheel. I've already got the screws out. Now, when you take them out, the switch from the left side will be the switch on the right side once you get it reinstalled, and that's in order to make the wires long enough to plug back in. Okay, we'll set that aside. The next thing you do is you need to make a template. And you take your back bezel, lay it on a piece of white flat cardboard, and draw the outline of it out. And then where this raised part is, I just kind of pushed down on there and it made my mark. But you got to cut that little rectangle out of that template. And when you get done, you'll have a template that looks like this. Then on the square bottom, you come up 3/16 of an inch and mark it, and do the same on both sides. Okay? Now, let me put that out of the way. You take your steering wheel and you work from the back side. Okay? You take your template and the flat of this, you put that line on there and you put that on that, okay? And you measure up from the bottom to the center of that rectangle 1 inch. Then you measure from the leather over 1/4 inch. You do that on both sides. What I did is I do it on that side, and then I flip your template over to this side. Then you drill where that mark is. You drill a 7/32 hole. Drill that on both sides. Now you got your center hole right there. Now you take little small files and you start elongating that round hole and make that rectangular hole in there. And you want to make it pretty close, because that bezel, that raised part of that bezel, has to sit down in there and index that wire chase, that bezel for the wire chase to come out. And you do that on both sides. It'll look like that. Now, when you get the square rectangular cut, you lay your template up there again, and you draw pretty close. You draw you a line all the way straight down that you can see. Then you take a rotary tool, and I stacked 4 discs on there. Any good rotary tool. I have a Proxen myself, a Dremel or any other brand. And then you just stay inside that line of that leather. Don't touch your leather. And you start cutting that. And then you come over to your other line and I left the line until I got it on there, and I cut that out, and then you just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. After you got it recessed a little bit, you put your template back in there, and you draw your lines this way. Then you take your rotary tool and you start cutting them out, and you work them together. Now you're going to use a lot of those discs up, and you want to be slow. And after you cut it a little while, I take some bigger files, then I would clean it up. Stay right along your edge, clean it up, cut it in this way, and do that to both sides until you have them both identical. And what you got to do is you have to get, this steering wheel is a lot thinner than your new steering wheel. And this steering wheel, when you mic it, is approximately, right at 12 thousandths, 1195. And you got to cut this T-slot down so it's that same dimension. And you do that on both sides. So when you're done, you're going to sandwich these two things back together. And that's your gap. That gap right there is this thickness of this right here. Okay? Now, when you get that cut, I took tin foil and I wrapped the leather. Then I took some masking tape right at the leather's edge. Then I took some spray paint and I just dusted the back of it, because this will be a bright polished aluminum after you cut it. And I just touched it up a little bit because you're going to make some little scratches. So when you get that done, now you can start assembling this thing. And when you put your wire, let's see, that's the right, I gotta make sure I'm putting the right. The switch is marked on the inside. There's right, so it's going to go on the left side now. So you put your wire through there. Then you put the appropriate bezel. Now these little tiny screws, I used the Phillips. The come on my Leatherman is the smallest one I had, and the heads of these little screws are a Phillips, and they are tiny, tiny, tiny. And if you drop one, good luck in finding it. I dropped one, it took me a half hour to find it. But you took that. Let's see if I can get lucky here today and re-put this thing back together. They don't have to be super tight, just where they bottom. Too far away from my bifocal, I can't see. Okay? Now, you do likewise to the other side, and you'll see when you put that together, there's no gap right there. You got a nice fit, nice tight fit, but it's not loose this way, and it's not loose this way, and your wire will come out, the wire loom out of the bottom of the bezel. That's important. Okay, let me assemble the other one real quick. Then the real fun gets in. What am I doing around here? Okay. Now, let me point out something else you may have to do. I had to take my flat file and cut down just a little bit here on the top, so you got a good clearance, so both sides of those will sandwich together in there. Okay, that can wiggle a little bit there, but when you put the bottom half in, then it'll put it right in place. Alright, now for the other baby screws. I can't stress enough about them little screws. They're here again, they don't have to be super tight. When you feel at bottom, that's plastic. You don't want to over tighten it. You strip them out, you're in trouble. Okay, and this is what you should look like on the bottom of that. Okay, and that's what it'll look like from the top. Now we're going to start reassembling this, and this is where the fun comes in. You'll need to go online and buy you an adapter plate, and you go to a company called Chilicoke, CHILICOKE.com, and this plate, this adapter plate, is about $40, and they're going to charge you about $5, $5.80 to ship it. And you'll get the little black screws that match the little Allen head screws to actually put the steering wheel on the plate with. And your other holes will actually mount this. We're going to show you that in just a minute, to put it all back together. Okay? Now, there's an O-ring, the plate, and an O-ring, and the 6 little black screws will all come in a kit. Now to put this together, I'm going to sit down in the chair. The thing with this is you got to have this O-ring in there to take up the space from the other steering wheel. The other steering wheel was relieved in the bottom holes. So this takes up that space when you put the adapter on, and you put that on there like that. Now what I did is I took one of the basic screws and I put that on there like that. Alright. Now I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. I got to put the plate on first. Nope, I'm ahead of myself again. First we got to put them little plugs in, and this is where it gets real tricky. You have to set that little plug down in there. I don't know if you can see this. you got to re-plug them back in, and this is a real trick. Let me get my little pliers. And these are fragile little wires. They're alright, now I'll go on the outside and push that puppy up there. Alright. I got one plugged in, now I gotta get the other plugged in. If you had another set of hands, this would be a whole lot easier, but I don't have another set of hands. And you gotta make sure they're completely seated. Now, you take your adapter plate, make sure your O-ring's in place. Now you get that center screw started. I got ahead of myself. Now these are a 4mm Allen wrench, and you'll need that to take the original steering wheel off. Okay, now you have to make sure that these wires will allow you, that's why I didn't tighten that, to push that thing up something's holding it, so I got to back them off just a little. Okay, that'll fit. Now, you hold that up there, then you start putting these in one at a time. Here again, do not over tighten them into that plastic. Now you make sure your wires are not pinched. And all your 6 holes for your little screws are visible. These are a 2.5mm Allen head. I just run them in until they're up, until I got all 6 of them in, and then you can come back and then tighten them up. Then these These can be tightened up pretty tight because you're metal into metal. But I just want to point out, past experience with aluminum, make sure you do not cross thread these little threaded screws that you're going in there, because that would be a real trick to repair. I also like to mention, while I'm putting this together, this company called Chillicoke. They have a good website, and in the website, if you look under their 2527 steering wheel, they have some do-it-yourselves, and actually it will show you how to put this Mamo on originally without those wires and without the buttons. It's a good video. They got some other videos in there worth watching also. And then I like to snug them up on, go to every other screw, cross snug. Now when you plug this back into the game, and you turn the game on, you have to go into settings, and you have to take what was programmed for the bottom button and program it to the top, and what was at the top you have to reprogram it for the bottom. You have to do that on both sides, for top and the bottom. You have to reprogram them buttons, because they'll be just the opposite of what they were, if you can, whatever you assign these buttons for. I got horn, and I got my engine brake, and I got my Tracker 4 centering button on this side, and then I got my nav, 2 navs, and a pause button on this side for my Tracker 4. But now you can see, as you're driving, your thumbs are right there, just like on the original steering wheel. And on some guys, they change the steering wheel, but they lose 6 buttons. And so then I took, this steering wheel will come with a real horn button, and this normally, if it was on a car, would snap down in there. I turned it over. I took a piece of felt, and I took the metal part of the horn button that would normally be your contact, and I put this piece of felt in there. You could use any kind of filler, and then I made this just snap inside them like so. Then that'll just set inside that hole right there, and it gives you a nice dressed, finished look. Okay? Now I'm going to shut off and take it back and come back with it all hooked up to the computer and show you how the buttons work. Alright, I'm back. Now if you look up underneath here, you'll see how the wires have cleared and they're not pinched between this black plastic and the adapter. That's very important. When you tighten that down, you're subject to cut them wires. So as you're tightening everything up, you need to check that. Make sure the wires are in the little loom of the bezel. Okay? Now, this is my turn signal from an earlier video that I did. This is a remote. Okay? Now, let's get my thing back up here and we'll start the video. Alright, I'm going to plug it in and you'll see the lights will come on. And the wheel's going through its turning setup. Now I'll start the game. A little loud. Alright, I'm going to start my engine now. Okay, now the pause button, when I turn my head left or right, it's in the lock position. I'm going to unlock it. Something ain't working right here. Horn works. Tracker 5 is not hooked up. There it goes. See there, it's centered when I did the center. I'll rev the engine up and you can hear the engine brake. So you can see all the buttons are working. Watch my navigation pages, they change. So all my buttons are functional. Now, earlier I didn't show these. I put these tags on there. I had them, some super thin aluminum shimming, and I made them up so when my grandchildren and other people drive my truck, they know what the buttons are for. That's strictly an option. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Let me show you my turn signal here real quick where that's a earlier video I made, how to make remote turn signals for Logitech steering wheel in Euro Trucking. Thanks for watching.